we have a job to train and teach our children and young people to carry on. And we want them to do that. We want them to go forward. And I want you to note with me, if you will, look in Proverbs chapter 22, a very familiar verse, but look at verse number 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I want to just point out a couple of things, and I'm going to make some application at the end. That word train, if you look up the root of that word, it really means, some people say it means to discipline and all this, but actually, the root of it is to narrow. You bring things into a narrow road. In other words, your training of a child is teaching them to narrow their thinking to the things of God. That's the idea. Get them on the narrow road. One definition means to dedicate or to be narrow. The world's philosophy for children is expose them to as much as you can so their horizons are broadened and they can make their decisions based on all of those things that they see. I submit to you that's a false premise. The Bible premise is you narrow that. The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 16 that we ought to be wise concerning what is righteous, and we ought to be foolish and ignorant, if you will, to the things of the world. Why in the world would I want my children to know all of the evil that is in the world? I want them to know the truth. And so we want our kids in our church to be narrowed down so that their thinking has to do with that. Is narrow the field of choices. Can I just use this illustration from our home? And Francis and I, when our children were growing up, we made a big deal out of little things so that big things never came up. We wanted to narrow it down. If something little was done, and I don't mean that we whipped our kids every time they turned around. Some people get that idea in our house. That's not true. But we didn't allow things to get out of hand before they understood this was not the direction we wanted them to go. We tried to narrow in, to focus in their life with them and their training. Keep this in your mind. And so we want to narrow the field of choices for them. As a church, we want to teach our children. Brother Darren mentioned the Wednesday night and the children's church and those things. I don't think most of our people realize the importance of what it is to have that little bit of time every week with those kids, something geared to them, to train them and to teach them and to help them. I will tell you now, the Master Club program on Wednesday nights is one of the greatest tools I've ever seen in my life to help children grow up in the knowledge and admonition of the Lord. It helps them to do that. I would also say this, and some of you won't know this, but this is a tribute to our parents and to our Master Club workers. We have in our church, we have not had a year, I don't believe, in I don't know how long, that we have not had at least one child get the Ambassador Award, and there are church after church after church that has never had one kid get the Ambassador Award. That is the highest award you can get in the Master Clubs, and we have it year after year after year after year. And we think about, you say, well, preacher, what difference does that make? The difference is what our kids are being taught. They're learning the Word of God. They are learning to live for God, and we want them to have that. And I would say this, as parents, it is our place to keep them in the place where they can be taught. When we had a Christian school in Columbus, Georgia, we had a lot of kids that were late every day. I mean, they were just late every day. So these kids were late. When they were late every day, we started out, okay, if you're late, you're going to stay after school 5 minutes. Or you're going to, you discipline the kid. Then we figured out something. It wasn't the kids' fault they were late. Those kids coming to school, they didn't drive themselves to school. It was the parents' fault they were late. So we came up with a better plan. We started fining the parents when the kids were late. You know, when the parents had to start paying, it helped a lot. Because it was the kids that were late, but it was the parents' fault they were late. Let me tell you, the kids who were in Master Club We want them there, but you know who gets them there? Mom and Dad get them there. Mom and Dad is the one who has to make sure those children are in place. Mom and Dad are the one who have to make sure they're in Sunday school. Mom and Dad have to make sure they're in the place of being taught. And we want to do that. And I would just like to say this. The church cannot take the place of the home. We do not try to take the place of the home. We want to be a supplement. We want to help you. As you want your children to do right, we want to encourage them, whether it's teenagers or children. We want to help them do right, but it begins at the home, and we want to teach them. But I want you to notice also in Ecclesiastes 12, this very familiar passage, and I want you to notice the wording. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. Notice what he says. While the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. As I was thinking about this, the first word in that passage is remember. I want to just say this. You cannot remember what has never been put in. If it's never been put in your mind, you can't remember that. If you never experienced anything, you can't remember it. You didn't have that experience. Francis and I have been married 46 years, and a lot of our humor, nobody but us would get. We quote things to each other when things happen, and sometimes it's one of, you don't even have to say it. We know what each other is thinking with funny things because things that have happened, things our kids have said in the past, and something will happen, and we just look at each other. We know what it is. I told Francis one day, I said, you know, if either one of us dies, we better not remarry because whoever we marry would never understand what we were talking about. It's been 46 years to build what we talk about. You know why we do it? We have memories. We remember. You remember those things, and you have that. But if something has not been experienced or something has not been learned, it cannot be remembered. You know, the Lord said to His disciples this. He said, listen, when you stand before kings and others, don't take any thought for what you're going to say. I'll bring it to your mind. But I want you to notice this. Nothing can be brought to mind that was never there in the first place. When the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go. And I thought about this. Sunday school, the teaching, services, the preaching, Wednesday night, TNT for the teens, Master Club for the kids, all of those things that goes on. It is to expose them to truth. It is to challenge them to live. It is to teach them what is there and to encourage them to carry it on in their life. I will tell you this. The Christian life is exactly that. It is a life. It is not knowledge. It is not just knowing truth. It's a life that is lived. Francis and I and our kids, when we were in Selmer, Tennessee, we had a family, the Maxedon family, who are still very dear to us today and very precious to us. They came to our church from a Methodist church in town. And they started coming. They had 3 boys, Don and Sue and 3 boys that were in their family. And they started coming to our church. And I am grateful that they loved our church. Don and Sue were already saved when they came to us. They had been saved before. But when they came to our church, I had the privilege of baptizing that family. But here's the reason they came to our church. And I want you to listen carefully to this statement. As we were talking one day about it, this is what they said. You know the difference between our church, and they were talking about where they were coming from, and this church. They said, your faith is a way of life. Our church is what they talk about. But your church is who you are. And I'm saying to you tonight that for our teenagers and our children, they ought to learn that what we are teaching and preaching is who we are. It's not just knowledge, it's a life. We want them to remember. I think about what I heard the teenagers talking about this, where they learned about Joseph, and I was given one of those little devotional guide things they have, and I looked through that thing, and I'm thinking, you know, that's wonderful. But how much greater is it if they can take what they learned in 1 week and apply it for the next 51 weeks? if it becomes a way of life to them, they will remember. If it is in their mind, they will have it. I just want to say this as well. For our kids in Master Club and our teenagers in our youth group, if they have instilled in their heart, just like these kids going to camp, and they came back and every one of them, it was great. It was great. They're going to remember that joy. The boys and girls going to the ranch, they remember that joy. They remember the thrill. They remember the excitement. They remember the decisions that were made. And all of their life, they will always want that joy, that thrill, that experience in their life. They may wander away, but you know what will be in their mind? What they had. It'll always be there. There will be something in their heart that says, I would like to have that again. Every Christian in here can tell you, every adult in here can tell you, if you've ever backslidden and got cold and gotten away from God, every one of us can say, I remembered the days when I had the joy of the Lord in my heart, and I wanted it again. I wanted the bells to ring. I wanted, as old Dr. Jack Hudson used to say, I want to hear the buzz, the bees buzzing and the butterflies flying. I wanted the joy again. I want our children of our church, the teenagers and the little kids in their master club, I want them to have something in them that no matter where they go, they never forget what they had. And they'll say in their hearts, Lord, do it again. I am reminded of 3 John verse 4, when he said, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. No greater joy. I think about that a lot, and I think back over my life. Francis and I have been in ministry now. Next month will be 46 years we've been active in church and in ministry. 46 years. I look back over those and I think of all of the children and teenagers that have come across our path. When we were still in college and I was working in Alpine, Tennessee, I was young and dumb. Trust me. We had a 1972 Volkswagen. Kathy was 3 weeks old when we started going up there to Alpine, Tennessee. 147 miles up on Sunday morning, 147 miles back Sunday night. By the way, let me just say, that's why I have no patience with people who say they just can't make it to church when they got about a 10-minute run. You know what I'm saying? 3 hours it took us up, 3 hours back because of the way we had to go. But anyway, when we were going to that church, I taught the teen boys Sunday school class. It was while I was in Alpine that God revealed to me youth work was not my calling. Those teenage boys, they loved to pull a prank on me. Anything they could do. We went out one Sunday morning after church. My Volkswagen had been picked up and put on the sidewalk. Backwards. I mean, I couldn't get it out the way they put it up there. They thought that was the funniest thing they could do. I did not think it was funny. But you know, we got together for the 50th anniversary of the church the other day, and when we were there, you know what those teen boys were talking about? Putting my 72 Volkswagen up on the sidewalk. But let me tell you, of that group, one of those boys that was in that class is today pastor of that church. And he has been now, what, Fran, about 15 years or so? He's been pastor of that church, doing a great job. Another one of those boys that was there is pastoring in Texas today and has been a pastor for many years. I look back over our life and I think about those kids that came through and what they're doing. We've had many that did well in business. We've had many that did well in education. We had one boy that came through our school who was flunking out, doing horribly, but when he got with us and he got his heart going, that boy went on, and you wouldn't believe all the education degrees he got and everything else. That's wonderful. But there is nothing like knowing that those guys that came through are walking in the truth. Nothing can top that. Some of those kids are now on the mission field. We are supporting some of the kids who were teenagers in our church who are now missionaries, and they're our missionaries from our church. I think, man, that's wonderful. We have kids that are teaching Sunday school. They're working in other things, teaching in Sunday school. Some are working in different children's programs and adult programs. Some are working with the youth. Even though they are working full-time in other places, they're busy for God. We have some that are assistant pastors and some pastors. And I think about it, that is what we want to do. I want the kids of our church to be narrow. I want their minds to be on the things of God. I want them to think the greatest thing in the world is to do something for God. And they don't have to be a full-time Christian worker to do something for God. They can be faithful where they are. I want to tell you one story, and I close with this. We had a family in our church in Columbus, Georgia. And for my children, so you don't wonder who I'm talking about, the dad owned a print shop. They had one son, their oldest son's name was Justin. He and our son Bradley were close friends. And I always called Justin just in case. I told him, I said, Justin, we keep you around just in case. If we ever need you, we got you, just in case. Just in case, he was a good guy, but he just never really got sold out, so to speak. He had a little brother, real quiet little guy. Never got in trouble. Their mother and daddy, when they started coming to our school, their mother and daddy never came to church. We'd try to get them once ever, maybe they'd come anniversary Sunday. That was it. They wouldn't come. Just never came. But their two boys got involved, and the younger one got involved in the school, got involved in the church. I'm going to tell you something. That boy went on to Bible college, coming from that home where the parents didn't go, and an older brother who could care less. He went on to Bible college, and today, right now, he's a young guy. What is he, about 30? Yeah. He and Carrie, same age. He and his wife are right now, they've just gone to their first church as pastoring. I look at those kids and I remember, I sure am glad somebody had a heart for a little old boy whose mom and dad did not have the same heart. But a church had a heart to narrow them in and teach them and help them. Because I can tell you right now, if the church will do what it's supposed to do, God will lay His hand on the children of our church and bless. Ron mentioned something about our young people. Stephanie, when she was talking, and Matt were talking about the children. It was pointed out this is the future of our church. Sometimes when you look at them, they're right, it is scary. But thank God they will grow up. Thank God they will mature. And wouldn't it be wonderful if one of these days, one of these boys, one of these teenagers, one of these kids that you see around here, steps up and becomes pastor of this church. Let me tell you, there are going to be Sunday school teachers around here. There are going to be workers here. But we want to narrow them in as a church. And I want to say thanks to the parents and the workers who are training our children and teaching them to serve God. Let's bow our heads together in prayer.